Hello. Could someone let me know if I'm audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Hello. Very good evening, sir. From the behalf of the whole IIT family and the students.
Good evening.
Uh, so I'll be starting in just a minute, sir. Very good evening, everyone. Namaste and Shalom, BS mates. I'm Mayank Jaswal on behalf of Diplomacia Society of IIT Madras. Is thrilled to be your host for today's premier session. Before we get started, let me take a moment to thank everyone who have made this event possible. Our honorable guest, Mr. Naor Gilon, and the respected Divti Ahwalia ma'am. I would like to express my gratitude toward the respected POD members and my teammates, Tamajit, Rupkatha, Nivedita, Orka, and Piyush, for joining us today. Today, we are honored to have a distinguished guest among us who have spent more than decades as a diplomat and a representative of our country, which is one of our closest hosts. Please welcome Honorable Mr. Naor Gilon, Ambassador of Israel to India. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. You want me to start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm very happy to be with you guys. I'm sorry it's not done physically, but that's the best option I guess we have. I was asked to speak a little bit about the relations between India and Israel. We just finished our 30 years of full diplomatic relations celebration. I'll speak for like 15 minutes about it, and then I'll open it 15, 20 minutes maximum, and I'll open it for some discussion, which will be the preferred side, I guess. So when you look at the India-Israel relation, I think it's right to start in looking about the civilizational connections that started about 2,500 years ago, when Jews first came to India, Kochi and another place not too far away from you. And the Jews here lived in India for a very long time without any persecution. And most of my career I spent in the West, in Europe and the US. And there were centuries of persecution of Jews. Here, Jews were like other minorities, so they were treated equally and not differently because of their religions. And it's very typical, I guess, also for India that so many minorities living together here, some of them religious, some of them other minorities, and tolerance was always a strong part of it. And then the next step probably in the relations, I would go to modern history, modern time, is First World War, where many Indians fought as part of the Anglo-Indian army to liberate from the Ottoman Empire, from the Turks of today, what later, quite a few years later, became the State of Israel. You know, our first Prime Minister, Ben-Gurion, who led the country before it became a country and then as the first Prime Minister, he had a high admiration for India and also especially to Gandhi. He saw the Indian movement of Gandhi, although the principles were different because Gandhi believed in nonviolence, and we believe that if needed, we will also fight for our liberation. And also another difference is the fact that both of us were under British control, but we were not part of the empire. We were a temporary mandate that was given to the Brits. Anyhow, if you go to Sde Boker, the place where Ben-Gurion decided to retire after he was prime minister, you would see in his bedroom a picture of Gandhi on the wall of the bedroom. And this shows a lot. He used to do yoga. He believed a lot in India. And so Israel was declared before, in 1947, there was Resolution 181 of the UN General Assembly, which decided to divide what is Israel today into two states, a Palestinian state, a Jewish state, and an Arab state. And Israel accepted this resolution. India voted against. So it was perceived as a resolution that was favoring Israel because Arab states did not want this division. So the beginning was that India voted against. In 1948, in May, Israel declared its independence and was invaded. So the War of Independence started. When Israel was the partition, this resolution from 47 was voted, India was a very young country of a few months, and India voted against. So the beginning was not that bright of our relations. And Ben Gurion is quoted, the two first countries, major countries which supported Israel were both the US and the Soviet Union of the time. And Ben Gurion said, once India joins them, the picture is complete. To understand how close he was or how highly he regarded he had for India. But only in 1950, a year and a half later, India acknowledges Israel. 1953, Israel opens a consulate in Bombay of the time. It was not reciprocal, so India did not open one in Israel, and also the consulate was very limited in what they could do. Our relations took the next leap, probably 1992, and when we established full diplomatic relations. If you look at the historical background for that, there were two major changes that happened around that time. One of them was the collapse of 1989, the collapse of the Soviet Union. So we became into a unipolar world in a sense. And after that, there was, of course, the first Iraq war, and afterwards also the Madrid Peace Conference, the first conference between Israel and the Arab world. And following that, there were a line of countries who established or renewed relations with Israel. It depends what was the status before. China did also, and a few weeks later, also India did. So 1992 was the next step. Over the years, our relations were based mainly on defense. There was a lot of defense cooperation. India was for many years, was part of the non-aligned movement, which was not the friendliest to Israel international organizations. But defense was going, despite all of that, defense was going quite well. It's known that during Kargil war, Israel was supplying India things that other countries refused to do or continue the supply. And the other element I would say is probably agricultural technology, water, irrigation, all that came from Israel to India and was part of the development of the agriculture here. Drip irrigation, there were non-GM. So Israeli companies until today are involved with 70% of the Indian market share when it comes to irrigation. Some of the companies today are already Indian, Israeli companies which were bought by India, and some are Israelis with subsidiaries here, joint ventures in different formats. When we come to speak about agriculture, today we started in 2005 a project of Centers of Excellence in Agriculture in India. It's a government-to-government, non-profit thing that we are doing together. Most of the finance, by the way, is coming from the Indian government, local and federal. We have 30 Centers of Excellence now in India in different places, and we have another 14 on the way. So in a year and a half, we will have over 40. The next big leap, probably in the relations, started in 2015. With a visit, the first official visit of a high-level Indian personality, which was the Indian president of the time, coming to Israel. And then the next two continued visits were 2017, the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Israel, and a few months later in 2018, Prime Minister Netanyahu coming here to India. And along the years, I must say, there were prime ministerial visits on presidential. Our Prime Minister Ariel Sharon was here in the early 2000s. Our President Ezra Weizmann was here, but it was not reciprocal, and somehow it disappeared. But what happened in the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Israel in 2017, we upgraded our relations to strategic partnership. And what happened from there is that if before we were based mainly on defense and somewhat on agriculture, technology cooperation, our cooperation really bursts to all fields. So today it's very hard to mention a field where we are not cooperating. Just to give you some numbers also about what's happening between India and Israel today, there are close to 20,000 workers in Israel from India, most of them caregivers. Now we have new agreements that will add more workers, both caregivers and construction workers. India wants also professional workers in computers and such. It's discussed as part of an FTA discussions. The Indian student community in Israel is the largest non-Israeli community. It's 1,000 strong, and we have to understand that Israel is only 10 million people. So we are a tiny country. It's not that it's a huge country, and we are very sensitive or trying to prevent immigration to Israel. So working for a certain period of time, of course, is much wanted and desired and positive, but immigration is already a different story because it's a very small country with a lot of problems, as you probably know. The 1,000 Indian students in Israel, what is interesting about them, that if in the past we used to dedicate special scholarships that were done, especially for Indian students, but also for Chinese, by the way, today, most of these students are living out of scholarships on the basis of their excellence. So this is one, that they are competing with others and they are good enough to get a scholarship based on their excellence. Another element is the fact that in Israel, the offering of undergraduate is very slim. So most of these students are advanced research students, MA, doctor, and postdoc in the best institution in Israel. In Israel, I don't know, people are not aware, but just take the Technion, a very small technical university in Israel that was established, by the way, the idea came from Albert Einstein 100 years ago, almost. They're going to celebrate now. This small university of 12, 13, 12, 13, I think, students or something like that, a little bit more maybe. They have already 4 Nobel Prizes on their list. So 4 of their graduates or professors are laureates. So it's, they are very high level. Another high level institution is the Weizmann Institute, which is only for master and upwards. And this is life sciences, and it's one of the best in the world, really one of the leading ones in the world. When we speak about what's happening between India and Israel today in trade, for example, our trade, in 2022, according to the Indian numbers, is well over $10 billion, and it's a huge hype. Before COVID, we were about 5 billion, and when we 30 years ago, in 1992, when we established our full diplomatic relations, we were around 200 million. So the jump is really incredible. There is a lot of potential between our countries for cooperation, like clean tech, medical devices, cyber, artificial intelligence, quantum, robotics, water. By the way, in the embassy here in Delhi, we have the only water attaché of Israel in the world. Because we see the potential and because the prime minister has agreed on projects together, so we have that too. I don't know how much you know Israel, so it's a tiny country. As I mentioned before, it's less than 10 million population. Jews are about 7 million out of them, so 77% more or less are Jewish, 20% more or less are Muslims. Citizens, I mean, voting, have their own parties, join other parties. So, but Israel is considered or got the name the startup nation. We got the name, first of all, because someone wrote a book with this title about Israeli ecosystem. But as Kissinger used to say, when someone came to Kissinger with an argument, he said, wow, it's a great argument. It has the added value of being the truth. So the added value of being the truth of Israel as a startup nation, we are, even in 10 million people, we are in per capita, for sure, we are the number one in the world, probably in different elements of innovation. but also regardless of our tiny number. So if you look at Israel, percentage of the budget going into R&D is the highest in the world. We are over 5%. You look at patents, we are like number 2 in the world, number 3, education, more or less the same. There are many, many elements. I will not go into all of them. Unicorns. Israel had close to 90 unicorns. So it's more or less the same number of India. But you have to remember that when you come to a tiny country like Israel, a unicorn cannot be based on local markets. The market is too small for it. It has to be a potential international appeal to the company in order to become a unicorn. So in a country like India, if you have a good product, you have a cellular company, for example, because of the size of the market, regardless of the prices that you would take that will be much lower probably than other countries, etc., the market cap, the size, of course, is a huge element. So, for us, over 50% of about 20% of our population are working around the high tech, but it's over 50% of our export. And it's the growth engine of our economy. Israel's economy, the GDP per capita, GNP per capita, is among the 20 highest in the world. So I think we were ranked 17th last year. It depends who counts and how they count, but our economy is doing very well. We have quite a few Israeli companies working in India, investing here, working, employing. The biggest employer is Amdocs, a billing company in Pune, which is employing around, if I remember well the figure, around 14,000 people. You have Teva, the Israeli medicine pharma company, who is here quite, I think it's the biggest employer for Teva after Israel, US. IDE in Chennai, by the way, the desalinization, I think it's if I'm not wrong, it's the biggest desalinization facility in India. And more companies are here. So, and also on the Indian side, I know it's not popular today, but Adani got the Haifa port. So he bought the Haifa port, or the concession for 50 years on the Haifa port. And this is a very strategic move by Israel, giving it to an Indian company now, regardless of who is the Indian, because we have Israel is a de facto island, because our relations with our neighbors, we have peace accords with most of our neighbors, with Egypt and Jordan, not most, half, because with Syria and Lebanon, the other land neighbors, we are on a state of war, you can say. So, but our orientation of our economy, of our lives, of our tourism is an island. So we go either, we would fly now, Dubai is very popular after the I-2U2, either we will fly westwards, Dubai, India, direct flights, and hopefully more. By the way, to fly from Delhi to Tel Aviv, from Tel Aviv to Delhi, that's the shorter route, is less than 5 hours. So we are very, very close physically. I mean, you look at, for example, at Australia as your Indo-Pacific area. How long does it take you to get to Australia? Think of it. Israel is less than 5 hours flight, which is really amazing. So the fact that Adani took the Haifa port is a sign that Israel was ready to give it, and we have only 2 ports in the Mediterranean, Haifa and Ashdod. So 50% of our port power, deposited in Indian hands. It's a strategic asset for Israel. I think it's a huge, huge step forward, and also the biggest Indian investment in Israel. The last point that I would touch probably on the defense, the big change that is happening in India is the Make in India, this philosophy that it's not only to be made in India, but also technology transfer. Many countries, I mean, this is, of course, slowing down a little bit the Indian procurement in the last few years until the strategy is in place and everyone is clear about it. But many see that as a problem. I think that for Israel, it probably will be an opportunity because Indians and Israelis are very much similar. Maybe I didn't say a little bit about the people-to-people relations, and I should have said, but when you look at I've served, I think this is the 7th posting I have. My 3rd is ambassador. I've been ambassador to Italy and to the Netherlands before. I've served in the US as a diplomat. I've served in Europe, in other places, twice in the US. And in no place did I see such a wide popular support toward Israel as I see here. So, wherever I go in India, I think this is very evident for me. And this is part of the people to people from the Indian side, but also from the Israeli side. It's already for years that Israelis, after doing their military service, and military service in Israel is compulsory military service, which is part of our strength, by the way, also in innovation. We can speak about it if there is interest, but the military has a huge part in the fact that Israel is such a superpower of innovation. And these Israelis who come to India after, some of them, quite a few, after military service, for them, it's a full immersion visit. So they come as backpackers, they come to and stay here long periods, months up to a year. And they do Vipassana, and they go to yoga, and they go to temples, and they eat like, they want to live the Indian life. They don't want to live the touristic life. And now you have already 2nd generation of these people. So these parents who are now taking their children who are teenagers and taking them to India, I know that to have them experience the same experience that they had their age when they went. So it's a wonderful thing. If you go in Israel, you would see many people who know surprisingly a lot about India, by the way. It's really interesting. So coming back, I think that Make in India, because we are culturally very compatible in many, many ways, and we work well together, I think that Make in India, we are agile enough to be the strongest partner of India also in that for the longer term on the defense to continue. As it is, we are very strong defense partners, and Israeli defense companies have about 80 joint ventures already here in India. So the numbers are very, very big, and there are quite a few Israeli businessmen from the defense who are living here permanently. I'll stop here probably and open it for questions, please.
Hello, sir. We are honored to have you as like a distinguished guest. You spent more than 34 years as a diplomat and a representative of your country, and which is one of our closest toast. So, Your Excellency, what are the key difference you saw in diplomacy between these decades in your long diplomatic career? Like, what's the change you witnessed in the early 90s era and compared to recent times?
Yes, I think that diplomacy in general took a big change from the first days of diplomacy over 200 years ago. First of all, the language then was French, by the way. I don't speak French. I speak Italian, I speak Hungarian, but French I don't. Anyhow, the language was French, but more important is that usually the ambassadors were very powerful people. They were usually merchants or business people. They would cover their own costs. They would trade with the country. They had the right to declare war. And I guess that you know why. They could do anything more or less because the communications at these times were so long. So, you were the ambassador of Britain, of the United Kingdom to the US. In order for you to tell the king something and get back his reply by sending something by ship, it would take you 3 months, okay? The ship goes there, they have to consult and give you an answer, and you had to take decisions. It was much, much different. And they had rights to be the government, to speak in the name of the government in any respect, because of the lack of communication. What happened in the world, and especially in the last 30 years or so, that communications are so advanced today that the ambassadors, the embassies, are not anymore the only tool through which governments can speak. I can tell you that in most of the countries most of my jobs as ambassadors, our prime ministers less, but our foreign ministers at least had the WhatsApp number of each other. So they WhatsApp each other, and probably they don't put me in CC when they do that. And this is always, as an ambassador, it's a challenge. How do you stay relevant? Because you don't have anymore the full control and the uniqueness of controlling all the, all the messages that are going between the countries. They don't really need me today for this. They need me for other things, because there is no substitute. So still, the ambassador still retains the right. He is the only one who can sign the agreements in the name of his government. And when it comes to consular affairs, and there are a few elements where the ambassador still retains quite a lot of significance and importance. But in our world of global village that we live in, that everyone knows everyone can be connected to everyone, the news runs very fast, everything digital, there is still no alternative, I think, or no substitute to personal touch, to being in the place. So you can read about a place, but it's not the same as being there, meeting the people, listening, unfiltered to the information, to what's happening. So you are the person who, first of all, really knows best the place, who can advise your government on decisions, on many things. I take policy, I don't ask Israel even. I know more or less what are the limits or the borders where I can. Israel is a very informal country. I have to do I step out of the borders, very, very significantly in order for someone to give me why did you do that? It really, I think in my career, it never happened to me. So we are very, in this, not all countries are like that, but in our case, it's very much like that. So, you have to see where is your added value. I think that one of our added values today, for example, is in business and economy, because embassies have the ability to understand culturally the place where they are. And there are always cultural gaps. Almost all countries have some cultural gaps and differences, and maybe between Western countries on the one hand, and I don't know, Far East countries, Japan and Europe, they have, although they are part of the same bloc, they have huge differences in culture of doing business, understanding each other. What is the deal? Do you use lawyers? Don't? Only in Tel Aviv, by the way, a city of 450,000 people, 500,000 people, there are more lawyers than all of Japan together, just to understand the state of mind of how a country where the lawyer is very, very significant in doing business, for example, in the life, and where they're trying to keep it outside of the realm of the judicial and legal systems. So things are, ambassadors and embassies can be very relevant in economy and helping connecting the two sides and making them speak the same language and being the mediator, the cultural mediator, I would call it. It's also important on people to people. At the end of the day, today our diplomacy is totally based on social media. I will tell you that when I served in the Netherlands, once I came see old-fashioned people. I'm not young. I'm 59. But I saw people that in their way of thinking, regardless of age, are much older than me. And what happened to me in the Netherlands, there was a newspaper in Amsterdam, which was not too favorite of Israel, let's say it very mildly. And every time they used to take opinion articles from people who are against Israel. Once I went to them, to the editor, and I told him, look, why don't you from time to time balance it? And I will give you, I'll give you an Israeli or myself, someone will write an editorial opinion, which will be a, reaction to the other thing, or, having a discussion. So the guy told me, no, I don't believe in giving countries the opportunity to put editorials or opinion articles, because countries have the means to send the message very easily. NGOs and other organizations have a problem. I mean, you guys know that there are so many individuals that have more followers on social media than countries, than the official. So it's a total, utterly stupidity to say what he said. But the other side of it is that I don't need, in India, every time and it happened to me also in Italy, every time I was ready to speak to a newspaper, there were 10 newspapers asking me, just do the interview with us, speak to us. this is not an issue. But today we don't need the media, the traditional media. I mean, I also use them. I use ANI, I use others, but I don't need them because I have 50,000 followers on Twitter, and I can send a message. You know, when I have a message to send, I can do it through there, and you know, it will reach my most popular reached millions. Okay, not too many of these, but when you do something that you want to reach the people, you can do that today in social media. So I think that, you know, this old type of diplomats who don't understand the power of social media. And I used to, by the way, put pressure in certain countries, and will not name them, when I was serving there, through social media on the government on things that are related to Israel. Here, there is no need. The relations are so friendly that we do everything in understanding. But in other countries, you know, you start putting pressure, and you, in a way, your followers, your supporters of your country especially, will start taking the message and amplifying it. And you can put a lot of pressure on the country, on the political leaders, because they look at the social media at the end of the day. So I think there are huge changes. Embassies and ambassadors have to adjust themselves in order to be relevant in the new world. We fight for relevancy because in the past, it was given to us, handed to us on a silver tray. Today, a silver plate. Today, you have to fight, but those who understand their the added value. And another thing, by the way, if you live in India, you can be very relevant for Indians on the social media because you understand the culture, you understand the holidays, you take part in all this game. And I think this is very hard to do when you're sitting in Israel and you are in charge of 10 countries. It's very hard to follow, to be part of it, and the people-to-people element. So I think that's these are the main differences.
Thank you, Honorable Sir, for sharing your valuable insights with us. Now I hand over the stage to Mayank for the questioning. Mayank.
Your Excellency, I have a question, if I may.
Please.
So what are the factors that contribute to the success of Israel's education system? So can you please share a brief insight of how Israel's policymakers, student, government, and think tanks work together to develop and implement education policies, and in turn make a world a better place?
So I think that the number one advantage that Israel has over the world, over other countries, is the size. When you are a small country, the differences, when I think that you go to a big countries, India, Russia, I don't know, China, you will see big differences in the education, that is the education options that there are for people who live very far away from the big cities to the big cities. Also, by the way, there are differences of infrastructure, of health services, on many, many things that this is part of the issues that India is trying now to, I think, to handle. So education in Israel, we have 10 universities, and there are no huge gaps between the universities. They are better universities, they are lesser, but all of them are quite reasonable. Like India, by the way, we have the culture of education. So we are, I think, the number 2nd in the world in high education. And because it's a part of the culture, the expectation, when your parents tell you what they expect from you, many times it's to go and study in university as a first stage. What you do with it after, it's a different question. Now, so we have very few universities relatively to the number. We have a system, by the way, in our universities that in order to become a professor in the university or doctor to teach in the university, until your postdoc, you have to have at least 2 years experience abroad. So you cannot grow up in the Israeli system, study your undergraduate, graduate, MA, doctor, and postdoc, all in Israel and become a faculty member, because they want you to enrich yourself and with other university, you know, to have some kind of an added value outside of Israel. So this is another element. Another element maybe that is relevant is the fact that Israel was one of the first countries in the world to do the technology transfer institutions. These are institutions that were sitting in the academic institutions in Israel, and they take the ideas, the inventions of the university, of the academic side, and trying to make it into a business. Now, I've served as ambassador to Italy, as I mentioned. In Italy, if you tell the universities, take your theoretical ideas or your academic ideas, make them into money, for them it's desecration of the temple. How can you speak about that? But in a real world, you compete today for finances. If you want to have good research, you need to have budgets. And the government budget, and the government does support, university in Israel costs about $3,000 a tuition of a year. For Israeli salary, it's 1 month's salary. Okay, that's of the average salary, the lower average salary in Israel. This is a 1 month salary. So it's really affordable for most of the students in Israel, since they arrived at university at the undergraduate after military service. They are 21 years old, more or less. They work. Most of us work during our studies to support ourselves, to be independent financially. Even if the parents do help and support, still we work ourselves. But again, the technology transfer, just the Weizmann Institute and Hebrew University, in their technology transfer, brought $10 billion over the years, from the 50s, I'm speaking, in money back into the university. By the way, the Hebrew University, the biggest exit in Israel ever, is Mobileye, which is the company which was bought by Intel for $15 billion. And they are doing autonomous cars. So they do the old mechanical system that are the most advanced in the world. So they came out of Professor Shashua came out of the Hebrew University. He's a university professor with quite many startups, by the way. It's not the only one that he's done. So this is a big element, that we have quite a lot of money for research, and we are very focused also on the research and we also have agreements with different countries, especially with the European Union. We are part of the European Union R&D program. The Europeans are changing their rules, by the way, because they found out that the Israelis are the most benefiting of all the European Union. What we put in, which is a must of everyone, we take out the most because the Israeli researchers are proactive. They need money. They are very, you have to find the European partner in the program and everything. But we took more than we put in. And they say, it's not a European country, and they're taking more than all European countries. So we have some advantages here and there. But at the end of the day, I think that the fact of being a small country, as I said in the opening, it's a huge advantage. I cannot see big countries like India, for example, achieving so fast this unity between the outskirts of the country and the big centers of the country. It's part of life, it's 1.4 billion people. It's a little bit complicated, I guess.
Your Excellency, we have a question from one of our students, Ishan Chandrakar, and he wants to know how Israel and India are collaborating in the field of higher education, and your views on the India-Israel student exchange programs.
Yeah, so in the past, as I said, there were proactive scholarships that were designated for Indian students and Chinese students, as I mentioned. It was the same program. That's why I mentioned them together, because we decided that these countries have bright people that we want to bring to Israel. This stopped because our higher education system said, but we don't want students because we give them a scholarship. We want good students because we give them scholarships. So we want to get with the scholarship, the same money we spend, we want the best qualified students. And as I'm saying, India has the highest number of foreign students, and most of them are scholarship students, by the way, not paying students, as you would guess. Israel, while the tuition is very low, the country is one of the most expensive countries in the world to live in. So this element, I think, is extremely important. Just I saw now that the Weizmann Institute chose the doctor dissertation of an Indian student to be the winning of 2022 in their field. So, and I met, when I went in with the end of October 2021, I went with Dr. Jay Shankar to Israel, and we met representation of these Indian students. They are the brightest. I'm telling you, really, also in the Israeli institutions, they are considered among the best students there. And this is a wonderful thing. We are trying also to create, beyond that, cooperation between universities. Again, the problem is the gap of sizes between India and Israel. So, 10 universities have to cooperate with all the world. The capacity is limited. But we are trying as much as we can to do cooperation between universities. We are trying to bring here Israeli students, but this is also not too easy. It's a cultural, I guess, element of Israelis trying to go westwards when they go to study. I mean, it's mainly the US, and then if not UK, Europe, other universities. But this is a question of many years, I guess, how it developed. But we have to do much more, by the way, on this field. But we are already doing quite well, but there is always room for improvement.
That's really impressive, Your Excellency, and thank you very much for your answers. Now, one of our students, Samriddhi, actually wants to know what it's like to being a diplomat. Like, as a diplomat, you have to deal with the government of two countries, as well as the media, press, social media, and also the peoples. So the pretty basic question is, how do you handle everything? We are quite amazed that how every diplomat actually handles all these things together.
You're not born a diplomat. You train, over years, like every profession in life. You start, when I started my first posting, everything looked for me very huge, big, frightening. I'm not different than anyone else. I mean, with time, you gain confidence, you know much more. You already experience situations, you know how to take your experience from one event to the other event. Again, being an Israeli diplomat, on the one hand, it's one of the hardest jobs in the world, because Israel, not in India, thanks God, is one of the most attacked countries in the world. I don't know if you know about it. By the way, also in cyber, the most attacked country in the world nominally, regardless of the fact that we are very small in size, is Israel. But also politically, if you look at the numbers, they are, the non-aligned movement that India was part of it, not all of them attack us, but it's a majority already in the UN. You know that the Palestinians, that for years, that was the defining element of our international relations, they have more countries that acknowledge them than countries who have diplomatic relations with Israel, just that you know that. The other part is that Israel, as I said before, is very liberal. So I know my lines more or less. Over the years, I learned them. And I feel I was working with 3 Israeli prime ministers. I was the deputy foreign policy advisor as a young diplomat of 3 prime ministers. I've been the chief of staff of another minister, of a foreign minister. And so you gain experience. I served in many countries. So with Israel, I have no problem. With India, when I come to a country, every country, India, Netherlands, Italy, every country you come, it works differently. And sometimes some countries, when you tell you no, it's maybe, and when you say maybe, it's no. You never know. You have to start understanding to try and understand. In India, the hardest thing for me is that I'm a planner. In life, I want to know up front. In India, in our visits, for example, official visits, nothing happens until the last 4 days before the visit. And then you start things starting falling into place. When are the meetings? And a lot of improvising, which we also do. But for you as an ambassador, that you know that your foreign minister or prime minister is coming, and 4 days before the visit, you don't have still a full program, because that's the way the Indians work. You have to get used to it. So some things you have to adjust. Also, I will tell you that you take your family around. So I have 4 kids. Although in the last 3 since being an ambassador, my older 3 kids were not with us. Only our youngest daughter, who now also left for Israel for military service. So in general, a big challenge you have is that your family is moving with you, and while you have to adapt to a new job, your family is facing, your children are facing their own crises. They have to adjust to new friends and new school. It's quite an affair, by the way. When you look back, I think that my kids did very well out of it. They got a lot out of it, but it's a challenge. It's not something that comes very easy. Not everyone is built for these changes. You have to love it. I fell in love with this moving every 3-4 years a country. It's, you know, you have to like, if you don't like it, you will suffer from this career. It's not a career for you. So this, if you want stability in life, don't be a diplomat. This is exactly the opposite of that. But I love the career. I'm probably going to retire after, our retirement age is 67. But I took a decision that after being ambassador 3 times, I think I want to do other stuff. Also on the way, by the way, during my career, I took 3 years in two different stages of unpaid leave, which is possible in our system, in favor of the business sector. So I was a venture partner in a venture capital, American, German, and Israeli in a sense. So I was trying to do other things just in order to make my life more interesting, not to feel that I'm in government because I have no better options, but I'm in government because I want to be in government. And I think that, you know, when I will be 60 next year and I will finish here 3 years, I think I will head towards retirement and doing other. Retiring is not stop working, but going back probably to business and maybe academic world and do other things in life, not to feel. You see, when you even moving from country to country becomes not enough for you as a career because you do the same job. So you say, okay, I say at least, I want to do something that is totally different. Maybe also all the time in Israel, because now I have also 5 grandchildren, and this is a big incentive to stay in Israel more time, and my kids and everything. So, you know, it's an adventure. You have to love it. If you love it, you will enjoy it. And I certainly did.
Your Excellency, uh, it's a great pleasure to interact with you. At this point of time, like you talked about the security measures and that Israel is the most targeted nation in the cybersecurity space. So my questions and the social media thing that everyone is like free to share their views and all.
You're silent. You went into mute.
Yeah. So
Mute again.
okay. The host is
Sir, I'll
muting
finish
me.
the questions from his side. All right, Himanshu.
Okay.
Sir, there are a lot of people actually from our side who wants to be diplomat, as like you. So, any suggestions for us who wants to? Your Excellency, I wish to know that there are many students who actually wants to be a diplomat like you. So, any suggestions for us who wants to pursue diplomacy as a career?
You know, first of all, as I said, you have to like it. You have to want to do it, to travel around the world. You have to be very proud of your country, because the price that you're going to pay for representing your country is quite a big price. The salaries are not as they are in the private sector. So there are also people in the private sector who move from place to place, but usually private sector knows how to compensate much better. So you have to have a passion. I have a huge passion for Israel. I do it. For me, it's not protecting. I've been 4 years in the military. I was an officer in the paratroopers. So as I said, everyone goes to military, but I did extra. Because 3 years is the normal, and if you want to be an officer, it's more time, and I did 4. And you know, it's just a continuation of the way I was brought up. For me, it was very easy. But if you have a passion and you have languages skills, which is very important, and you are a flexible person in the ability to adapt to situations and places, this is probably the most important element in being a diplomat. Because you come to a place, if within 3 months you are unable to be part of the place and to adapt, to understand the culture, to understand the people very, very fast, you are wasting your time and the government's time and the money and everything, all the efforts that are put in. You have to be very agile and very light on your feet in this sense. You know, if you love it, you love your country, you have the tendency to understand cultures and languages and things, this is the place for you. And these are the things, you know, all the knowledge about the world, about diplomacy, for me, it's always, when I came to the ministry, one of the first test was a 400 general knowledge questions about the world. I will tell you that it's not relevant. During the years, what I was looking in my diplomats, it will be strange for you, beyond the agility that I spoke about and the ability to adapt themselves, is being practical people. Many of the diplomats are very, very smart, but not practical. And being a diplomat, you have to take out projects. We do public diplomacy projects here. We worked with NGOs in order to give education for, so, you have to, we have our Independence Day, an event that next month of 1,000 people that we have to organize. We have visits to organize. If you're not practical people, you don't know how to attack a situation and organize and break it into missions and timelines and everything, it's a big problem. So there is nothing to learn, I think. I mean, if you have the qualities, you have the qualities. And you will be probably, you have all that I mentioned, you will be a good diplomat. It's not, today it's not this old diplomacy that you outsmart the others. It's very open. Everything is open today. All the information is out there. People know everything today. There is no anymore control of the knowledge by some. Everything is in the open. So it's a different type of world, I think, that we live in. And diplomacy, as I said before, has changed accordingly. So that's more or less.
Your Excellency, so I would like to actually let you know a brief about our society. So in our society, so we are trying to be as practical as possible. Like we have a bunch of students who are really interested in public speaking and other things, and we wanted to pursue diplomacy as career. But then we came to know that there are a lot many students who are like us, but they don't get a platform like this. So this is the platform that we have created, and we actually invited you as one of our first guests to know how actually we can pursue in future. Actually, I would like to know that, like, we are a student of data science and we are actually a computer science undergrad. So how this actually brings an edge to our diplomacy career?
I think that, again, in today's generation, diplomacy is very much about social media and knowledge. And it's not, in our ministry, you have to have some kind of undergraduate. We have some dentists, we have some doctors, we have lawyers, we have political science like me. So each one is coming from a different field. I don't think that what you're studying necessarily is relevant. It's more about your personality and what you have. And of course, people who are better in, and I think that the generation today, regardless of what you study, everyone is better today in social media. It's a second nature for people, for young generations. Everyone is good about data mining in the internet. Before you go to meetings or about topics, you want to do data mining, you want to come to the meeting more knowledgeable than or at least as knowledgeable as the other side, so not to have an advantage or not to have a disadvantage. And I think that all that is, of course, going to serve you. And what you studied, I'm not sure that it's a problem or an advantage or disadvantage. The fact that I studied political science and, it's supposedly the thing that goes best with diplomacy, and my master's is in international relations, it's not relevant for anything. Because all of that is theoretical knowledge. You don't go in the diplomatic life, at the end of the day, the theoretical knowledge is not important. What is important is the experience that you gain, if you know how to learn from your mistakes and to learn from others and to take in the right ways, and you have the right character and you are likable on people, which is very important, by the way, also, because at the end of the day, when you come to speak to someone, you are asking people for something, okay? This is diplomacy. I have a need and I approach you. If I like you personally, or if I don't like you, dislike you personally, or I like you personally, it really has a lot of influence on the outcome, regardless of the arguments. At the end of the day, diplomacy or relations between countries, all of that is people to people. One of the big changes in the India-Israel relation is in one picture of Prime Ministers Modi and Netanyahu standing in the waters of the Sea of the Mediterranean when they went to see. Both their trousers are pulled up, so not to get them wet, and they are very intimate with each other. Okay, this is the message coming out of it, and this is better than any ambassador in the area, because one picture which shows intimacy between the leaders, that both of them are liked in their countries, and not by everyone, but majority. Both of them were elected, so they are popular. By the way, both of them are very similar, the same age. and are, in my eyes, are popular beyond being just a political leader. They have to some people in the country, they have a bigger appeal than that. So, when you have this, at the end of the day, also countries are represented by people. So it boils down to personal relations. It can be between leaders. And I tell you that since I worked with many politicians are very lonely people, because they are living all the time in a cage, in an aquarium. Everyone is looking at them. They cannot speak with people openly because they are afraid that it will be leaked, or they will be perceived as weak, or God knows what are the complexes that they have in their own minds. Each one is complex like any other person. People are complex creatures. So they are very lonely people, and they can, in 20 minutes in a room with another politician their level, they can speak much easier than with their own assistants, because they can be open to each other and be intimate to each other in this sense. And because it's not weakness, that they come from the same level. They share the same problem, by the way, the big problem of the thing. So I think that at the end of the day, the importance of having ability to personal capabilities is very, very important in that, more important than what you studied. Because all of us, by the way, universities qualify in most, maybe in computers and stuff like that, programming, it's a little bit different. But in most skills that universities give, the skill is maybe 20% relevant to what you will do afterwards. All the rest you will do on the job, even if you study law. Because, when you study all the books of the law, which is very theoretical and very wide study, when you go and practice law, usually you will practice something very, very limited, and you will go dive deep in. So what you studied in university is really not giving you what you need. Doctor, they study 6-7 years, and they do also on-study. But when do they really start? When they start working in the hospital, the practical work, this is when things really start happening. You read about things happening or phenomena in the body, but until you see and experience that, and you're under pressure to give answers and to take treatment or take decisions, it's not the same. So regardless of what you studied, it's about you. It's not about what you come with, I think, to the profession.
Tomaji, any questions from our students' side?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your insights. Now our two students, Priyanshu and Samir, have a question that, Your Excellency, how can India and Israel collaborate to promote global peace, security, and drive growth during India's G20 presidency? Actually, what steps can be taken to broker peace, resolve conflicts, and promote economic growth, and how can these efforts be maximized to leverage the strength of both countries?
Unfortunately, we had 20 years more or less of ability to cooperate in this world, because from the time that the UN was established after the Second World War, we really came immediately into a two-polar world, where it was a zero-sum game. If you wanted something, it means that I am against it. If I want something, it means that regardless if it's good for the world or bad for the world. And this was a very big challenge that all of us had to confront. When I served in the UN, it was our mission to the UN, it was the late 90s. The world was okay, because after the collapse of the Soviet Union, as I said before, we were in a unipolar world, more or less, the US, and there were other polars, but no one was as strong as the US, and the Russian-US relations were relatively reasonable at that time. And you could pass things in the UN. It was doable. Today, we are back to the natural situation in which the world is paralyzed in the UN. And it's not UN is an example, all international organizations. So if the G20 was an organization that was built to work on commercial, financial, environmental, and such things of the world, now it's still doing that. I mean, they have working groups in the G20, but the topic now that they cannot agree on that comes in is politics, is political debates because of Ukraine war, Countries are trying to block the final declaration, which is dealing with all the important issues of economical, financial, all these that they are supposed to deal, but they are blocked and they are stuck because of political, inserting politics into it. So this is the unfortunate world where we stand. We tried, by the way, in the beginning of the Ukrainian war, our Prime Minister of the time, Bennett, tried to be a go-between to try and finish the hostilities in Ukraine, because we had relatively good relations with both sides, both the Russians and the Ukrainians. I know that there are people who are saying that Prime Minister Modi are asking him to do the same, to interfere. One of the problems is that if the sides don't want to have reach an agreement, it's impossible to impose. You will waste a lot of credit, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and nothing will get there, because if Russia or Ukraine thinks that, for example, I'm taking this crisis, that the continuing the war, not losing the war, is their most precious need, they are ready to pay every price. Take Iran. Iran decided that they want nuclear capabilities. Weapon is not there yet, but they are on the way there. They are ready to pay years of sanctions, of problems, of hardships for their people, because this is an element. And you can, whatever you try to do, and many try to do it, no one succeeded, because they decided that this is the number one. They have a lot of conviction on this, and they go forward. And that's why our hopes to make a better world really depend on the actors around us. So what we are trying to do now, because we are stuck in the multilateral world, as I said before, is paralyzed. We are trying to go, for example, to minilaterals. So finding like-minded countries, what we have in the I2U2. I2U2 is India, Israel, UAE, and USA, where we are trying to do projects, economic projects. Doesn't have any ulterior motive of security or defense or anything of the sort. We define it very clearly for economic. And what is the unifying things? I think that if you want to define country governments in the world today, I would separate the governments of the world to two kinds. The ones who are, at the end of the day, trying to make the lives of the citizens better, and the ones who are serving other purposes other than their own citizens. They believe that they're serving their citizens, but sometimes they are self-serving, the regime, the family, the corruption. So those who are trying to make the world a better place, and those who are not. For their own reasons, maybe they think that having this kind of religion or regime or whatever makes the world a better place, but most probably that most people in the world would not disagree with them. So this is what is in common between the four countries of the I2U2, that we all are trying to make, and the two projects that were chosen, the first two, one is in food security and one is in clean energy. So trying to bring to the world good messages of being environmental, being food security, which is also using technology to consume less water, to consume less pollution around it. So these are I think the ideas where we are and where we can do. World peace is not an option. I think that the differences in the world are so huge, religious, cultural, political. It's a mess. The world is a mess today. We have to understand that, and there is no one governing power today in the world. So we are seeing here, I think all of us are witnessing a competition between two powers mainly today, which is US and China. They are not in the full collision course yet, but seems like they are heading that direction. This will be, and the collision will probably enough financially, economically is enough. It will be very painful for the rest of the world, because these two countries, especially China, in supply chains and other things, if there will be a war, it's not like Russia. Russia had one element that the world wanted, which was energy. And there are alternatives and things, but China, for example, if there will be a collision with the West, it will be supply chains will be hurt. EVs, solar panels, all these things, by the way, are dependent 90+% on Chinese produced materials, owned materials, etc., etc. So I think that we are heading to bad times, and that means that the countries like us should find the countries we trust and stick together and try to do the best we can for our people and for our countries together. And hoping to make the world better is a wonderful hope, but you might waste all your energy in the wrong direction, because again, if there is a conflict and the two sides don't want to achieve understanding, both of them are sure that they are right and are standing their grounds, it's a waste of your energy. Better invest it in somewhere else and let them fight until they exhaust each other to the level that it's doable to reach an agreement.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And this brings us to the end of today's session, the Diplomacia Direction. I hope today's event was informative and enlightening. So, Your Excellency, I would like to invite our student coordinator, who is among us today, for actually giving us the opportunity that we had today. Good day, ma'am. Ma'am, if you are with us, please let us know your words that you have.
I guess there is a network issue. Ma'am is not currently in meet.
Okay. Everyone, so I would really like to thank you for your time and your views that you actually shared with us, and it will help us greatly. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, and I wish all of you success. Those who wants to be diplomats, those who wants to be computer scientists, and whatever you want to do, believe in yourself, in your ability, and go there. Go for it. I mean, it's a world where we have to work very hard to achieve our goals and hopes in life. And I believe that if you are determined to achieve them, you will achieve them most likely. If you have the abilities and the drive to invest what is needed to enjoy, you will do it. So I wish all the young generation of India in front of me a lot of success. I believe that India is going to be a superpower, by the way. It's on the way of being a world superpower rather than just a regional as you are now. And you are the future. You are the people that are expected to carry in the next probably 20, 25 years to carry the country forward. And I wish you success. Your success is our success in the way we see India-Israel relations, at least. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you guys for conducting the session.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot for joining in, yo. It was really great. Without your support, we wouldn't have done that.
Guys. Thank you so much for conducting this session, man.
Yeah.
It's a truly wonderful session, guys.
Yeah, man. You pulled off a great job. Kudos.
Sorry, we can't take everyone question because we already shared a G form. So
Yeah, completely understandable.
Yeah.
We had a limited time, okay? Like if you could ask all the questions, we could have, okay, but it was just an hour that we had.
Yeah, definitely. But the point is that this is just the beginning. So
Yeah, this is just the
society
beginning,
has just started this, and we will definitely achieve greater heights. We will definitely would like to invite more esteemed guests, team ambassadors, and get their point of view as well. So it was a nice idea, by the way, guys, for conducting this session on also for calling Israel's ambassador as our first guest. It was a nice thought.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you. Okay, guys, everyone, see you later and stay tuned for the Diplomacia's event, okay? We'd love to see you guys.
Definitely. Bye-bye all.
Hi, bro.
Take care.
bye everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Excuse me.
Please, host, please actually stop the live stream.
Excuse me, I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes.
Yes, Satyam.
Yes.
Hi, Mayank. Hi, Tamajit. So thank you so much for organizing this event. I want to be the part of the Diplomacia. Can I get the G-Space link or the WhatsApp group link if you can provide me?
Yeah, sure, Satyam. You know, we can actually talk it over the call, okay? If that's fine by you.
Yeah, sure.
Sure, man. Okay. See you. See you in a while.
Thank you so much.
Nivedita, can you make sure the live stream is stopped?
Not yet.
Okay. Can someone confirm if the YouTube live stream has been stopped or is it already
It
running
hasn't
at the moment?
stopped yet. It's live.
No, Mayank, it's still on. It's still on. It's
Okay.
चल रहा है.
I tried
let's
calling
go.
him, but he isn't picking up the phone.
Let's not say that over this. It's on live, guys, so it's gonna be there forever.
I request all the participants to please leave the meet.
Yeah, that would be the best thing that we can do at the moment. Everyone, thank you for joining in. Everyone, I would request you to please leave the meet. We'll be joining on a G Meet soon.
May I remove the?
No,
No.
Okay. Hello, sir. If you here to please stop the live stream.